Hello and welcome to Facebook Live. Iron Tamer Dave Whitley. It is Tuesday. No, what day is it? Today Monday? Monday, the 3rd of June, 2019. Give a few seconds here for people to start showing up, and then we're going to continue our discussion with bending styles. Happy Monday, Sarah. Thank you for stopping by. Ooh, chalk dust. Nice. Sean, what's up, buddy? Waiting for a few people to show up, and then we'll get started. Gene, hello, Gene. How you feeling? All right, we'll go ahead and get started now. Yesterday I told you that I decided to do a few days giving an overview of various bending styles that are popular among steel benders and performing strongmen and competitive grip sport athletes. Yesterday we talked about the most common, in my opinion, and probably strongest for beginners especially, variation, and that is the double overhand version. We talked about wraps, where to get wraps, different kinds of wraps. I'm not going to repeat all of that stuff. Sean's cholesterol is what's up. I see what you did there. It's clever. Don't quit your day job, though. I don't think comedy's your thing. Just being honest. So we talked about wraps, where to get wraps, types of wraps, wrapping technique, and we talked about the double overhand technique. So I'm not going to go over wrapping and types of wraps today. You can assume that what I talked about yesterday applies to everything I'm going to talk about today. And I'm also, since I did a fairly high amount of volume yesterday, not only what you saw on the Facebook Live, but quite a few other reps after that. I used the Facebook Live yesterday as a warm-up for underhand bending that I did after, and I did 5 or 6 more 60 penny nails after that. So I'm a little sore in the wrist, so I'm not going to do anything super heavy or super hard today, but I am going to use minimal padding, which is the Iron Mind pads. And today I'm going to take this Spiral 60 and I'm going to wrap it up, and I'm going to demonstrate the reverse bending style. You can see I'm doing the same thing I did yesterday. I'm not doing a super tight wrap like some of the big benders do. I never actually do that, or very rarely do I ever secure the end of the wrap on something and then wrap very tightly and chalk as I go and all that. It's valid, and there are guys who bend some phenomenal pieces of steel that do that. I simply don't do it that often because I tend to practice wrapping while I'm while I'm talking. And I do that because I'm a performer, first and foremost, when it comes to these feats. And yes, I'm working to get stronger, but I'm also constantly working on honing my craft as a performer. So you can see what I did while I was talking. I used the Iron Mind pads. I wrapped the same as I did yesterday. Actually, no, I didn't wrap the same as I did yesterday. A subtle difference in the reverse bending technique, which looks like this, that I like to do is, yesterday I wrapped so that everything was facing the same direction. When I do reverse, I tend to wrap opposites. You can see how the flap, for lack of a better term, is the nail is between me and the flap on this side, and the flap is between me and the nail on this side. So for reverse bending, that's how I tend to do it. As far as I know, and I'm pretty confident in this particular style of bending was pioneered by Pat Povolitis, and I'm certain of that. The reason being, and Pat can correct me if I'm wrong, is that for quite a while Pat had difficulty getting into this position because of some shoulder stuff that was going on, or possibly because of his spinal stuff. And so in an effort to make this position more conducive to his bending, he would start by kinking the nail this way and getting 20, 30, 40 degrees, 45 degrees bend in it. And then when he comes up here, he's doesn't have to raise his elbows up quite as far. Now I may be wrong about that part. I may not know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to Pat's history. I haven't seen Pat bend reverse in a very long time. Most of what I've seen him do in recent times is way up high. Off topic, wasn't Pat the first to heart a horseshoe too? Is Sean is asking. Yes, Pat Povolitis, as far as I know, and I feel very confident in this, is the guy who pioneered bending a horseshoe, twisting it into a heart shape. And I don't know if I have a heart-shaped horseshoe laying around here or not. I don't have a whole lot of horseshoes out here because I'm not really that into bending horseshoes. I mean, I'll do them in shows, but surely I have one around here somewhere. Sean, you're trying to derail me from what I'm doing here. We'll come back to that, maybe, if I can. I'm step out of frame for a second. Here we go. Oh, there's one. Yeah. All right, this is an example of what Sean's talking about bending a horseshoe into a heart shape. Pat Povolitis pioneered that, and I believe that the way Pat does it, he spent a lot more time and is a far, far superior horseshoe bender than I am. The ends wind up touching, and it's all symmetrical and pretty when he does it. With me, I just mangle it up and go on about my business. And the shoes that I do are nowhere near the strength of some of the ones that Pat has done. So, going back to reverse bending, I like to wrap going in opposite directions because the technique that I use, I'm exaggerating what my elbows are doing, but my elbows are going to start out wider and come close to each other. And the hand that's in front, for me, it's my left hand almost always. I want to supinate and flex the wrist at the same time. And so I wrap it in such a way that as I do that motion, like that, as my hand moves, it tightens the wrap. If I went at it the other direction, moving my hand, like say if I just switched hands and had it wrapped the same way, when I do this, that would cause the wrap to get looser, which is undesirable and also dangerous in some aspects. So what I like to do for reverse bending, we think of each hand has its function in this. In overhand bending, both hands are sort of driving, and I keep my thumbs touching my body so I don't drift way out here. And so both hands are sort of glued in place and moving in overhand bending. In reverse bending, I like to think of it as if you had a vise and you were putting one end of the spike into the vise and bending the other end. So for me, the hand that's closer to me, which is my right hand, my dominant hand, tends to stay still more, and the left hand tends to adduct and supinate at the same time, the elbow and the wrist going that way. So what it looks like is this. And you can see that the hand that was closer to me, my right hand, stayed pretty stationary. I'll lock this in against my ribs, and the hand in front twisted around a little bit to get this bend in it. And then once it's bent to that, then most guys will go up and just finish crushing down the same as if it were double over. Let me grab another little spiral nail here, and I'll be honest, that was a little rough. Even though it's a very easy nail, I am still quite sore from yesterday. I'm going to use the leather wraps for this one. You see I wrap toward me on this one, and then I spin it around, and I will just wrap toward myself again, and that way I wind up with the wraps going in opposite directions. Now the other way that you can approach this is you can have the hand in front is the stationary hand. I'm trying to get in frame good, and it functions as the vise, and the hand in the back functions as the driver. And so the action for that, for me, is actually shrug the shoulder up and think of almost like this whole forearm is like an ice skate almost, like skating through. So it's that sort of action. What it looks like full speed, and I'm coming in high that way, and go down like that. If I'm not mistaken, that's more the way that Pat Povolitis did it. The other way with the left hand doing that supination thing is a little more like Adam Glass does it. But it's a matter of deciding which hand is going to be your driving hand, which hand is going to be your vice hand or your anchor hand. Go ahead and finish this one down too. And that's really the basics of reverse bending. Mash them down really nice. I am probably least knowledgeable about reverse bending of all the different styles, so if anyone who's a super stud at reverse bending is watching this and sees any obvious flaws or any misinformation, please let me know, because I don't want to be spreading any misinformation. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about today, and oh yeah, if you have questions, throw them up in the comments section and I'll get to them. David Stevens is watching. David Mohegan's watching. What's up, guys? Lots of Davids up in here. What I want to talk about now is this thing, and this is from David Horn's World of Grip, and it's called a wrist developer. And it is an adjustable piece of equipment that has a bolt here and a spring, and these handles bend, and as they bend you get tension on the spring. So you can see, yeah, you can see that spring stretches out and it'll touch. You can hear that touch, right? This is a phenomenal piece of equipment for developing reverse bending power. I'm not sure how long it is. It's probably almost a foot long, maybe between 10 and 12 inches from here to here. Yeah, I'd say something like that. And what I've done with mine is I took rubber tape and wrapped around the metal. This looks like 3/8 inch or maybe some metric equivalent because it's coming from the UK. Same size as this up here. And I just wrap that rubber tape around it, and that gives me some tissue conditioning for my hands for building up to heavier bends. With this particular piece of equipment, the correct way to use it is to always have the open ends pointed away from you. So I don't want to, I'm here, I don't want to be here. I think that's primarily a safety thing, that if this thing were to fly apart, then the spring would go flying away from me. Now David Horn has the whole system set up with rankings based on what size spring you use, and you can see that there's notches here, and to make the resistance higher I just click it up these notches. He also makes an adjustable gripper called the Vulcan gripper, which is a phenomenal piece of equipment too. David Horn's World of Grip is where all that stuff comes from. I love this piece. It's helped me a great deal in my reverse bending. So you can see again, there's that technique. I'm locking my right hand in and doing this with my left hand. Phenomenal piece of gear, highly recommended. You can absolutely wrap these in leather. I know that this has been a contested event before, and again, I'm not much of an expert on grip contests, but I've seen video of contests where guys will wrap these up, put rubber bands around them, and then whatever spring level is required is what's used. Again, not a grip sport guy, so I'm not really going to talk much on that. Got any questions for me about reverse bending? Or about overhand bending from yesterday? Anything at all to do with reverse or overhand bending? If you do, please throw them into the comment section. Now, I've read on David Horn's website, that this piece of equipment, he advises that you only use it in the way that I just showed you for reverse bending. So anything that I say that's counter to that, proceed at your own risk. I have in the past loaded this thing very lightly and put it out away from me and done this kind of action here And it doesn't even matter if I get it to touch out there. This is a very, very compromised position for the wrist. Tommy Heslop bends this way. Very compromised position for the wrist, but it doesn't. That means that it doesn't take a lot of resistance to get a lot of work done because of the leverage factor here. Oh, there's David Horn. Hey, David, check it out. I'm talking about you're a wrist developer, and I'm talking about overhand bending. Sean says, I believe that David doesn't make a lot of springs for his adjustables. Don't really know. This is what they call a training spring. It's a very easy spring. I've got a couple of tougher springs. They're not out here. They're on my Vulcan gripper in my house. So there's an entire chart about how much, or about the level system that goes along with the springs with that. I just wanted to talk more about the technique today than anything. The other cool thing about this this particular device is if I want to, I can, well, a couple things. I can come way out on the ends and increase my leverage, or I can go in really close and decrease the leverage, which makes it harder. So that's cool. Now, David Horn has joined us, so that's pretty cool that we got the guy who created and built this thing is on my feed right now. So David Horn, if you want to throw a link up to your site where you sell these, if you still sell them. I haven't, I bought one, so I don't really need to go shopping for another one right now. But if you want to throw that link in the comments, please do. I highly, highly recommend and endorse anything that David Horn has to offer. I haven't used everything that he sells or that he talks about, but everything that I've ever gotten from him has been high quality, and he's a strong guy with a lot of knowledge as well. So yeah, that's reverse bending with the wrist developer, and I'm going to get one more now that I'm a little bit warmed up. I'm going to give it a shot with a little bit more wrap with the 60 penny nail, the bright and shiny one. Sean, you can microlobe with rubber bands. Yes, that's something I forgot to say. You can take, do I have any rubber bands laying around here? I do. Now this rubber band will probably break as soon as I try to unravel it. But let's say that I've got it set on whatever setting this would be right here. I got it in that notch and in that notch, and I can crank it and do very, very well with that, but it's nearly a maximal effort, and if I try to bring the spring up one more notch, it'll stop me in my tracks. So I'm at near 100% effort there. I can take a rubber band and put it around there in these top notches up here, and this rubber band really isn't anything significant, but it was just laying on the ground here, so I use it, and that will add a tiny little bit of resistance that gives me that intermediate amount between this setting and this setting. I hope that makes sense. Just crank it out that way. So I'm going to wrap this nail up and see how it goes for a reverse bend on a shiny 60 penny. Now the caveat here is I have not worked on reverse bending in any capacity for quite a while. So if this nail bends, awesome. And if it doesn't bend, that's fine too. So I'm going to go live on the internet here and we'll see what happens. A little more chalk. Okay, David has posted his website. It's davidhorn-gripmaster.com. High quality stuff there from a very strong, very knowledgeable, and all around good guy. Never met him in person, but all my interactions with David have been fantastic. So I'm going to go with this. Wraps pretty close to touching. I guess you could say they're touching. And here's the position I'm in. And again, I'm going to use my right hand to kind of to lock things in. I'm going to use my left hand to crank the nail into into the bend. So here we go. See, I got a nice little bend going there. Now here's another tip, when you're doing these kinds of bends, you can run into a spot where your knuckles run into your wrist and you don't have any room to push anymore. I learned this from Jed Johnson, to reach in with the fingers and grab right there, and you can squeeze a little bit more and get a little more bend out of it. I don't think this is quite to the 40 degrees that I would want it to be, but yeah, apparently my underhand bending is having to carry over to my overhand bending. Sean Kapusta, just FYI, both David and FBBC offer beginner kits. Yes, if you're in the States, I would say Fat Bastard Barbell Company you can get a beginner's bag, and if you're in the UK or I would assume Europe as well, David Horn would be your resource to go to for that sort of stuff. So, David, do you ship onto the continent in Europe? I'm sure you do. I mean, you ship me this stuff to the States, so if you guys need starter bending steel accoutrement, then that's the two places I recommend everybody go. David, you sell wraps as well, I know, because when you do virtual contests, it's required to use your wraps. So lots of good stuff there. So any questions for me, or does anybody want to throw out any other information regarding reverse bending, or any kind of bending for that matter? David said very easy. You talking about the Shiny 60? Yeah, it was not bad. It was not bad. We ship anywhere. Always chat to me and I'll help the person with all help. So, if you're not friends with David Horn, friend up with him. He'll chat with you and get you started on bending. David says one thing. Waiting to see what his next comment is. I'm going to guess that it's about proper and improper use of the wrist developer. I may be wrong, though. Let's see if I got anything else laying over here that I want to bend right now. You know, I'm not going to. I'm not going to bend anything else right now because I know how much work I did yesterday, and I don't want to mess myself up today. David says he has his left hand as the locked hand. Is that with the left hand in front, you lock with the front hand and drive with the rear hand? If that's what you're talking about, I talked about that before you got on the stream. And I tend to prefer locking with the rear hand and working with the front hand. But you can change in the middle of a rep too if you want to. So yeah, so David Horn is saying that he locks the left hand, the front hand, and drives with the rear hand. And they're both valid. I think that's the way that Pat does it too. I'd have to go back and watch a video. But anyway, I'm going to wind up going down a big rabbit hole if I'm not careful. So thank you all for stopping by. I'm about to go get a completely non-bending related workout in. And I will be back on here tomorrow, and we will talk about underhand bending, and we'll have some fun with that. David Horn says one other thing. I love it when I'm getting people who know more about the subject I'm talking about it on my live, because I get to learn too. That's awesome. Thank you, David. Just waiting for David. What's the other thing, Dave? I'm going to have a great time, but what's the other thing? Don't leave us hanging. To sum it up, davidhorn-gripmaster.com is where I got this piece. You can get wraps from him. You can get entry-level steel or custom steel from him. He's I believe he's in England, but I may be wrong. So if you're over in Europe, UK, Ireland, David Horn is the go-to guy to get the steel that you need and the wraps that you need. If you're in the States, I would recommend Fat Bastard Barbell Company for steel just because of the shipping. Well, not just because of the shipping, but one reason I would order from them if you live in the States versus ordering from David Horn is the shipping. It will kill you coming from Europe. Looks like Dave might have bailed on us. All right, I'm going to jump off. Hopefully, oh, here he goes. Actually, it is that you are struggling with keeping the front locking hand secure. Do some reverse with a dumbbell hanging from your wrist. Okay, so yeah, David still is typically rated, Sean says. So do reverse with a dumbbell hanging from your wrist. You're keeping the front locking hand secure. So I'm assuming that what Dave means is put that front wrist out there. He'll do a video on it in the future. Good. Tell me if I've got this right. The front hands here, you would somehow, like with a strap or something, put a dumbbell around that wrist so that I can see in my mind's eye how that would make this much more secure from some webbing. Yeah, like a dog leash type strap or lifting strap, that kind of stuff. Makes a lot of sense. Thanks for the tip. Bonus tip from David Horn, Grip Master. All right, I'm going to bail out, guys. Thank you all so much. We will see you tomorrow. Have an awesome day.